Thanks everybody for attending. I'm just going to do a lightning talk titled Hidden in the Liner Notes. They're accidental insights from a mediocre cataloger, which would be me, Joe Donnelly, and I'm the Associate Director of Discovery Services at Colgate University here in Central New York, which it's about 45 degrees and raining. Typical, October. So just some quick background. I was new to Colgate. I started in February. It was about 5 months before our Alma Primo cutover. I was also new to a managerial role, new to Alma, and newish to Mark cataloging. My background was in Dublin core, so there's a lot of new, and so there was a sort of the necessity of this sort of mini project that I did, or exercise that I did, was helped inform all of these things. So essentially this project, I put in quotes because it's more of an exercise, was to improve my cataloging in Mark, and also start documenting workflow and procedures that we needed to carry over to Alma. And the workflow for it is really, really simple. It's just, I would catalog a book in Sierra, that was our previous system, hand it to our cataloger, they'd email back notes, and then I document all those notes, and I put it in a Google Doc to keep everything sort of synthesized. And then I'd ask questions here and there. So these results that I got out of it, they're sort of direct and indirect results. The first one was just sort of better cataloging for myself, learning, getting better at Mark cataloging. But more importantly, it was an opportunity to sort of question and capture this workflow that we needed to bring over to Alma. Because while we were doing this, we're also learning Alma. So it was sort of like trying to make a hybrid of these two processes. And then it also helped me know who was doing what within a department. I only was managing 4 people, and sort of you kind of get to know, like, well, who's actually setting these policies, what things are, they're sort of hidden policies, things that are that haven't been actually disclosed or written down, but it's like, oh, that person does this, so that's a way to learn it, which is also important during an implementation process. But the indirect results that I was finding, these sort of hidden in the liner notes idea of it, is it also showed me the people's strengths in communication. We're learning, how are they teaching me? What type of how are they giving notes? Is there a positive spin? Which there was. Maybe that has to do with some, the fact that I'm managing this team. But it also is a good way to sort of let them start thinking about this process. It also created a space of gratitude. It allowed me to sort of appreciate what they're doing, and it allowed for sort of starting off with this positive relationship within them that sort of we could carry over through implementation. And then it also wanted to set like this standard and of vulnerability and authenticity, sort of saying, I'm not going to know, these are things that I don't know, and I want you to teach me. So starting from that vulnerable perspective and point of view during implementation, especially when we're starting with new software. Previously to that, they were in Sierra for 30 years, so this was a major jump. So, but coming from a place of like, well, you don't have to know, like, let's all learn together. And then also allowed these team members to demonstrate their value. So it's like, hey, look, how to do this. When we cut over, like, it's still going to be cataloging. Everything's going to be fine. And also demonstrating their own leadership. So then again, how this impacted Alma. The obvious thing was we captured the workflow that we needed to carry over. What was essential, we could sort of structure it, like what's essential, what's nice to have, what are things that we can now do in Alma that we can get rid of. A lot of it was like, well, how can we use normalization rules to sort of speed up our cataloging process? And it allowed for a shared language of like, well, what did we do in Sierra? What are we going to be doing in Alma? So sort of that crosswalk of terminology. Some things are different, the way things are phrased, all of that. The glossary for Alma was really, really essential, and sort of us adding our own language to that was really important, having our own internal glossary. And then also this authentic space to discuss our relationship with Alma, essentially our relationship with new technology or learning something new. There's a little bit of like, when you're, doing something you don't like and you're with a group and you turn to somebody and you're like, man, I really hate this. And they're like, I hate this too. It's like, there's sort of that ground level that you can start up from. It wasn't, people didn't hate Alma or Primo, but it was new to it. Everyone was new to it. And and I was new to it, but it was sort of my job to, you know, cheerlead it in a way. So, but sort of allowing for this space to be like, no, it's okay. Like, just, I understand you hate it, like, or this is different, but like, that's where we're going to start. We're going to grow from there. In the same way that it's like, well, I'm terrible at this thing. I'm this mediocre cataloger. Like, let me improve. And then this sort of this standard to like continue to learn, and sort of this continued impact that is carried over. Now that we cut over in July, so we just had our first semester with it. We've gotten through a lot of things. We're still updating lots of things, obviously, but it's allowed us to communicate from this very vulnerable space. So it's like asking questions, sort of setting a standard of, you don't have to know everything. There's going to be problems. There's going to be issues. How can we problem solve this as a group? What can we find within the Alma community that will help us? And then it's really helped in the whole team to discover all the different things within all these hidden layers within Alma, and for all of us to sort of go back to this Google document that we could now sort of move and turn it into an SOP for our team to help have everybody sort of structure it out. And so it's been a helpful sort of a small exercise that sort of turned into this larger thing. So that's it for me. So thank you for listening.
Good afternoon. I'm Violet. I work in the circulation department of the library at the University of California, Santa Cruz. And one of my responsibilities is creating every semester a circulation desk schedule for the circulation student employees so that the whole time the library is open, there's at least one student on the desk. The problem Sorry, here's the mandatory stats slide. The most important information is that at any given time, we have between 20 and 25 student employees, all of whom send me their availability. And again, I need to make a schedule for them at both libraries for a combined total of roughly 320 student hours a week. The problem is that students have tremendously complicated availability. They have classes at all hours of the day, at all days of the week. And so I need to know when they're available. I need to know when they're not available. And I need to know what times they are technically available, but still would not be a great idea to schedule them unless absolutely necessary. The solution I've found for this is called Timeful. It's a free website at the URL Timeful.app. And it gives me a standardized exportable interface. Let's talk about what those words mean. Standardized means that every availability for every student has the same format, looks exactly the same. There's no ambiguity, there's no back and forth. As soon as I get it, I can start going, I can start figuring out their schedule. Here's what Timeful looks like to a student who's about to start putting in their availability. You can see that on weekends, we open a bit later. On weekends, we close a bit earlier. So I don't need to know their availability at times the library isn't open. I can limit it to just those times. A student can just simply click and drag across the view to fill in their availability using either their mouse or their finger. They can drag green boxes for the times they're available and yellow for the times they could work but would prefer not to. The default red time is the unavailable. That could be they're in class, that could be they're asleep. I don't need to know why they're unavailable, I just need to know whether they're available or not. If they wish, they can also connect Timeful to their Google Calendar, their Apple Calendar, their Outlook Calendar, and Timeful will automatically look at that and see all the times that they're busy and fill in their availability from there. They can also make manual edits to their availability after that automatic autofilling. Once students send in their availability, Timeful has a backend view which looks very similar, but there's a list on the side of the page with all the students who have sent in their times. And simply by moving my cursor up and down the list, I can see different students' availability one at a time just by moving my cursor. And again, all in this same standardized, easy to read format. Timeful also allows you to ask about days instead of just times on days. We often require each of our students to work exactly one Saturday evening per semester. And so we can use the same visual language, the same green is available, red is unavailable, yellow is if needed, to ask them which Saturdays they're available and which not. Exportable means that for all that I use Timeful for asking people when they're available, Timeful itself is not the software I use to make the schedule. So Timeful exports spreadsheets is its main function here. A spreadsheet you can open in Excel, in Google Sheets, whatever you prefer. This is the spreadsheet for what we were just looking at, asking people which Saturdays they're available. And you can start coloring things in, and you can start noticing things like, oh, the student in column R, and throughout the presentation, I just mentioned this earlier, I've blurred their names for their privacy. The student in column R is only available on one Saturday period, so they should be scheduled on that day and not another day, and so on from there. Timeful also generates spreadsheets for the other case, asking about times here in 15-minute intervals. This is very detailed, very useful, but not great for a human to look at directly and make conclusions from. So I use different software. My preferred software for this next step is Google Calendar. So I used my background as a software engineer to write a tool which I've embedded in a LibGuide. And the URL is here at the bottom. Anyone can feel free to visit this to play around with it. So the first step is you upload that big spreadsheet we just saw, the one from the times with the 15-minute intervals. You make any changes to people's names that you need to. We had a student who went by her middle name, so seeing her first name here would just be confusing, so you can make that change. Maybe two people have the same first name. These things happen. And then finally, I just choose which of my Google calendars I want the availability to be exported into. They could be the same calendar, they could be different calendars, whatever. There's also an option to save people's availability to a different format of spreadsheet, which Google Calendar can import directly. And there are three reasons I might want to do this. One is if I'm not working at UC Santa Cruz anymore, the code that connects directly to Google Calendar will stop working. So this is just going to be a fallback. Two is if I want to make a few more manual edits before the import. And three is if someone else is using this and does not trust my code to write directly to their Google Calendar, which is very fair because you don't know me, you can use this safer export to CSV option and make sure it looks good before putting it in your calendar. Either way, though, everything that the people put into Timeful then ends up in Google Calendar. Each of these green boxes represents a time period that one student said they're available. Different green boxes are different students or different times. Each yellow box is a time period one student said they were if needed. And because it's Google Calendar, you can view multiple days at a time. Here is 7 days, but it also allows 2 days, 3 days, anything in between. Because they're being exported into different calendars, I can filter it to only look at the times people say they want to work. If at all possible, I want to build as much of the schedule as possible from just those times and only touch the if needed times, well, if needed. Finally, after a great deal of manual thought and staring and pacing and epiphanies and so on, this becomes a real schedule. The blue times are one library's circulation desk. The purple times are the other library's circulation desk. The yellow times are just getting started on the off-desk times, because again, the same pipeline, the same technology is used throughout for both on-desk and off-desk shifts. Little bit of backstory here. I asked the student employees, like the same people who use this, to trial 2 or 3 different software solutions and write testimony about their experiences. Timeful was the most popular. They used words like easy, they used words like fun, and this all seemed like good testimony in favor of using this. That's all I've got. I've included my email address at the bottom in case anyone wants to communicate more about scheduling with me. It takes up a lot of my thoughts, so I'm happy to talk with you. And a disclaimer, I have no relationship at all with Timeful.app or the person who made it. I've never communicated with them. I genuinely just find it useful. Thank you.
right. Hi, everyone. So my name is Leanne Mulholland. I'm the cataloging librarian here at City College, and I'm currently the department chair. And so I'm going to pass it off to my colleague to introduce herself very quickly.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marley Rodriguez, and I am the Equity and Outreach Librarian here at San Diego City College.
And today we're here to talk to you about how we are using Alma-D to showcase student zines.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to discuss what a zine is, and it is pronounced zine, as in magazine, not zine. And so a zine is a homemade publication used creating readily available materials. They are platforms for expressions of narratives from personal, political, satirical, and more. However, this is a loose definition, and a zine can be whatever you want it to be. It can be a comic filled with illustrations, an instruction manual, a collage used to tell a story, and so much more. And here is an image of punk zines from the Prelinger Library in San Francisco, just to show you what some zines look like. So just to discuss a little bit of the relationship between zines and libraries, zines have historically been collected by various types of libraries, such as public, academic, and special, and are valued as pieces of community work and information. However, zines have been rising in popularity in the last decade, which encourages libraries across the country to begin collecting and making available more zines. Some of the biggest and most well-known zine collections include Barnard College Library, which has over 5,000 zines, Reed College Library, which has about 1,300, and the Los Angeles Public Library System, in which 8 branches currently have zine collections. I do want to make a quick distinction that sometimes zines can be mistaken as, quote, arts and crafts, but rather they are a serious pedagogical tool for learning, creativity, and originality. Zines are unique methods of visual and artistic communication, often used to portray important socio-political ideas. So implementing a zine culture here at San Diego City College. So I began my position here in summer of 2024. Soon after, I began collaborating with a new English faculty member on creating a Zine Fest event. This annual event is hosted each fall and showcases student zines. Our first year, we only showcased zines from 2 classes, but this year we've opened up submissions to the entire campus community and are collaborating with more departments such as our Chicano Studies department and graphic design departments. As we build and grow the library's collection of student zines, we have integrated research sessions into classes working on research zines and are prioritizing selecting these research zines to go into our library collection. This leads us into discussing how we are building the library's collection digitally in our catalog.
Yes. So one of the things we considered as we were starting to develop this collection was the fact that because these are student created works, they're going to require original cataloging. You're not going to be able to find a record for this somewhere, in OCLC. And so part of the consideration is we are right now a 4 full-time library, soon to be 3 due to retirement. And so part of the consideration was baking in some kind of sustainability in terms of work for this project. And keeping up with like the DIY kind of nature of zines, we asked as part of these research zines that students are doing in their classes to help us build the metadata that we use for the MARC records. So we asked that students provide us the title for the book, the date and year that it was created, how they'd like to identify. So part of zines and zine making is sometimes like an anonymous culture. And so we wanted to allow students to be able to submit works anonymously or go by name if they'd like. And that's the name that we then use like in the MARC records as well. And just to be clear, when we were taking selections for this collection, we got consent from all the students to have these uploaded. So students gave their consent to have their work kind of in our catalog. As well. We asked them to write like a brief summary of their zine, so that will a little bit help me on the end in kind of summarizing their work, and then they get to see their own words like reflected in our catalog. And then lastly, provide just a couple of key terms, which then I then took and kind of translated into subject headings as part of the MARC records. So they're kind of then also kind of tagging their own records here. So that's on the bibliographic side. On the structure of the collection for the zines, one of the things, the best way we saw to do this was using the collection functionality in Alma. San Diego City College is a one college as part of a 3-college district, and we share one instance of Alma. So in order to kind of help with the chaos of having a bunch of different collections, we all only have one top level collection, and that's for each of the colleges. So that's why you might notice on this screen here that all 3 of these ones are actually sub-level collections, because we're trying to nest everything within its own kind of college here. So the first thing is we have one sub-level collection that's just for Zine Fest and for the zines. And then if you'll notice in the next image below, you can see that one calls out specifically student zines for fall 2024. And each subsequent year, we will go through and add a new collection under the Zine Fest one, and kind of nest it for each year. And the images that are taken are the logos from Zine Fest and then the flyers that went out for Zine Fest every year. So that's where we're drawing the images from. And this is how it's going to look in Primo. So this is one of the zines that we have here in the fall 2024 Zine Fest kind of collection here. You can see this is all the metadata that the student, provided. I translated some of the subject headings. And then what you'll notice too is there's that digital file, and that's where Alma-D comes in. They use, that's how basically we can store digitized versions of content. We do require that any user who's accessing this will need to log in through Primo first before that they can actually open the file. But once they log in, it looks a little something like this, where you can see this is the scanned version of the zine. And one of the things we are very fortunate here is we have a Kik scanner. And so students actually did the labor of scanning their own zines for submission. So that was a little helpful in the time to digitize some of this as well. So yes, this is what you'll see when you actually log into the zine as well, and you can see all the metadata on the side here, and then you can scroll through and see the zine. Some further project considerations is we did have some students who, instead of digitizing the zines, gave us the physical versions. And so we're now going to start to build, how do we kind of store these in our collection? How do we best catalog these physical versions of the zines? And then the other thing is, in light of the upcoming accessibility laws and rules, we just want to make sure any kind of digital content that we're putting out is accessible. So we're going to be exploring, like, do we need to do anything to this collection as it's kind of in the beginning stages to make sure all accessibility concerns are addressed kind of as part of it as well.
Yes, and then for the last consideration, as Zine Fest grows, so we are in our second year currently of Zine Fest coming up in December. Another consideration that we're keeping in mind is selecting our zines. After doing a lot of research in zines and libraries over the last year and meeting with other zine librarians at ALA this year, we decided to create a zine collection policy and criteria for collecting, and this helps us have equitable criteria for all students who are submitting zines to Zine Fest and to the library collection. So thank you guys. Please check out our zine libguide here, library.sdcity.edu/zines. This includes a short history of zines, tips for creating zines, our collection policy, and a link to the collection that Leanne showed. Zinelibraries.info is also a great resource for learning more about zine collecting in libraries. And then I have our email addresses here if you would like to get in contact with us to chat more about zines and Alma-D. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
We have a couple of questions in the Q&A, and Hugo's got his hand up. I will let him speak in a second. So the first one was just a thank you to Violet, saying that the Circ Desk supervisors will really appreciate this. And then Susie is saying what a great idea to you ladies in terms of getting students involved in creating the metadata and getting them. And then an anonymous question, can you provide more information about the scanner and how students went about scanning their zines?
Yeah, so we have it's a kick scan, and I don't remember the model number off the top of my head basically, but we do have, it's basically a flatbed, or it actually can be modified to accommodate a book scanner that we just have out in the library for students who need something to scan. And so what they can do is they can scan it, and then you can enter your email, and it sends whatever you've scanned directly to your email. And then that was forwarded to us.
Awesome.
Feel free, if you need specific like model numbers or things like that, let me know, and you can email me and I'll find that out.
And then another question in the Q&A, Susie asks, we are looking at using Alma-D to hold our student newspapers, yearbooks, and other student publications. Do you have any additional suggestions for this type of project?
That's one other thing we've considered using it for, is any kind of archival type work, newspapers. We have some scrapbooks, things like that. One of the other things we had kind of, I think, also kicked around was maybe student artwork too. If there is like paintings or any kind of printing things that we could, if students wanted to display as part of our collection, we could maybe do like scanned or photographs of that as well too. But we've only had Alma-D since I think it was summer of 2024. So a big portion of this project was just getting Alma-D, setting up, learning it, things like that. And then this first kind of like round of getting things into it, like I said, it's kind of an infant project for us. So we're getting there.
Fantastic. One thing I'll add for anybody looking at the either world of Alma-D is that from a metadata perspective, like a big difference between Alma-D and if you go with like Rosetta in the Ex Libris world is Alma-D items are connected to MARC records, and Rosetta can be KBART or Dublin Core, or more basic item by item. So I think when people are starting those projects and considering which product, that's a big metadata difference. Christine, did you have a question?
Yes, sorry. Okay, apologies if I just why do you require students to log in to look at the records that you have for Alma-D? I
That's
think you said that.
Yeah, so this is kind of just something that we, as we're building Alma-D, we just kind of decided it was easier just to have students log in as part of it. It's not something that as we're trying to figure out kind of the access rights and things like that, we'll see if there's maybe different ways that we could do that. But when we kind of went through and set everything up originally, it was easier, I think, for us to just have, kind of students logging in for it. We don't put a time limit on how long, because I know there's ways where you can set time limits for how long students are viewing things and things like that. We don't have anything like that. It's an unlimited number of users that can access this at once. We aren't restricting that either. It's just they just have to log in to just view it. That's all.
Right. I was just I forgot about access rights. I mean, that makes total sense. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions for any of the presenters? Hugo, go ahead. You should be able to talk now.
Sorry about that, Jill.
You're
Yes,
great.
presentation, Marley and Leanne. My name is Hugo. I'm from Cal State San Marcos, which is your neighbors up north. Yes, and I'm as a cataloger in the space. One of the outreach librarians have informed me that she wants to start a zine collection, just like you. And I'm very curious about what collection policies would you recommend to do in this instance? Because I figure that when we have this big, if students are contributing and all that, what would you define, like, what would be the framework for this create a collection policy that makes the collection relevant to the students?
I'm gonna let
Yeah.
Marley take that one.
No, yeah, there's a lot of good resources from other libraries that have created zine collection policies. And I am forgetting the specific institutions off the top of my head, but I did a lot of research going into creating our zine collection policy, and some of the biggest considerations were like making sure that it was like a collection driven by student work, because as an academic library, you know, very student focused, and we're very lucky that a lot of our faculty, or a good chunk of our faculty, are very interested in teaching zines in their classrooms. And so that leads to a very productive, you know, output of good quality zines coming from our students. I know some libraries prioritize community zines, and that's also like wonderful. But we were specifically looking to prioritize the city college student zines. So that was one of the criteria that we discussed, as well as making sure that the zine content was like provided citations and was more on the research side, like research zine based, as well. So they were kind of like these like research project sources, just kind of done in a different modality. So those were two of our biggest considerations. And then also written into our zine collection policy is just looking for like originality, creativity, which are subjective, but things like that. So that is on our zine libguide too, which I can just drop the link in the chat, I think, if that would work. But those are some of the things that we considered, and there's a lot of resources out there on creating zine collection policies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Technically, we're scheduled to be here for 10 more minutes. So if anybody has any other questions or wants to raise their hand, please do so. If not, I will let everyone go a little early and thank everybody for their attendance. All right. I'm going to post in the chat one more time the Zoom links for tomorrow. Tomorrow's the in-person day, but it will be also webcast on Zoom. There's a different channel for each of the locations. Just going to drop that in the chat. We're going for tomorrow. And final questions. Going once, going twice. All right, sold. Everyone feel free to disperse about your day.